Om Sai Ram. Let us understand chapter number 37, description of the Chavadi. But before that, let us do the Namasmaran, followed by chapter number 37, and then we will conclude chapter number 37 with the Aarti. Shri Satchidananda Satguru Sai Maharaj ki jai. Om Shri Sai Nathaya Namaha. 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 Om Sai Ram. Chapter number 37. Description of the Chavdi. I bow down to Shri Ganesh. I bow down to Shri Saraswati. I bow down to the Guru. I bow down to the family deity. I bow down to Shri Sita Ramachandra. I bow down to Shri Satguru Sainath. Twice blessed is Sai's life. Blessed is his daily routine. His ways and actions are wonderful and indescribable in entirety. Unfathomable are his true deeds. Blessed is the course of his life. Twice blessed is his irresolute and austral life of mighty resolves, which was like walking on the razor's edge. Sometimes he was intoxicated with divine bliss. Sometimes he was content with self knowledge. Sometimes he was aloof from all his actions. Such was his indeterminate state. Sometimes he was quite actionless, yet not asleep. Keeping in mind his aim, he always was abided by his own self. Sometimes he would be as propitious as the ocean, but also boundless, unfathomable, and deep. Who can aptly describe the ineffable nature? He regarded men as brothers and women as sisters and mothers. He was a perfect, perpetual celibate, and as everyone are fully aware. May the understanding we receive in his pious company remain with us undiminished until death. May our desire to serve him be abundant. Let our devotion be exclusively at his feet. May we see God in all beings and ever love his name. Those who are endeavored to understand his every action was baffled and at the end could only be still and nonplussed. Many people fight for the joys of heaven. They extol heaven's greatness. They consider life on the earth contemptible since there is fear of death here. In a way, one assumes a form from the unmanifest. This is called as the visible state. Again, one returns to the unmanifested state. This they call as death. Unrighteous conduct, ignorance, anger, hatred, etc., are the chains which fetter us to death. Those who can completely overcome them only can enter heaven. Heaven. What else is heaven? Detachment is heaven. Consider one's own Atma as the spirit that pervades the universe, excluding all sorrow. In the state, there is no cause for diseases, etc., nor worries, problems, pain, and no hunger or thirst, and none has the fear of old age. Where there is no fear of death and no pursuits and prohibitions, life carries on without any fear whatsoever. That is the divine and heavenly state. The same essence that pervades from Brahma to the animate, filling the movable and unmovable alike. The same essence is also there in another world as well as here. It excludes plurality. Although this principle is devoid of all attributes of mundane existence, it appears to be non Brahman to the individual soul, deluded by ignorance on account of association with limiting adjuncts. Parabrahma is something different from me. I am different. Those who believe in such a discrimination are bound by the laws of death. Death follows birth, and after death, rebirth. This interminable circle of nature is the fate of those who think thus. What is the use of a heaven which is attained by the most difficult sacrifice, penance, charity, but is devoid of remembrance of Narayan's feet? We do not wish for a place in heaven where there is only sensory enjoyment. Of what use is it to us if it makes us forget Govind's name? Be it in heaven or hell, the sensual pleasure is the same. The pleasures of Indra are exactly of the same nature. Indra moves about in his pleasure garden as happily as he rolls on the rubbish heap. The pleasures of both are comparable. There is not a slightest difference. Why strive for a place from where one is bound to come down once the accumulated store of merit has been exhausted? It is better instead to be born on this earth. The greatness of this earth is unfathomable. Is that heaven important only because of one's lifespan? There is thousands of years. This brief span on earth is far better than that. In life, which is transient, whatever action is done, if it is all surrendered to the Lord, the person attains freedom from fear. Of what use is a place where the devotees do not listen to and write gods and guru stories, or dance and sing to the worship of God? Knowledge is acquired about the union of Brahman and Atman that is permanent and the meaning of achieving the very best. For that, the best place is earth and not heaven. Surrender to the Guru, body, speech, and mind, and the five pranas. The questioning intellect should be merged in Guru totally, dependent on him. What fear of the world can be after the surrendering to the Sadguru? And why unnecessarily worry about the worldly transactions when he is here to solve all problems? Where ignorance abides, there exists attachment for progeny and property and constant worries about worldly matters, leaving not a trace of good thoughts. Ignorance is the root cause for establishing this plurality. Therefore, it is not necessary to acquire the knowledge of the Shastras in Sanskrit through a qualified teacher. Only this ignorance is removed. Even a trace of plurality will not remain and will release the person from the cycle of birth and death. This is caused by the knowledge of oneness. He who has even the slightest trace of separate identity will suffer the cycle of birth and deaths, for the creation and destruction invariably following the feeling. The good or the well being is the subject matter of knowledge, undoubtedly. And where only the pleasant is the subject matter, it is definitely ignorance. The greatest fear in the world is that of death. To escape from it, hold fast at your Guru's feet, for he is who will grant you unity consciousness. Where there is duality and plurality, there is only such fear that can enter. Therefore, where there is not even a trace of such fear, serve the feet of such a Guru. Adorn the forehead of the Guru with sandalwood paste of pure love and offer him the yellow garment of your devotion. He will show to the devotees that which pervades the universe. Offer him in the throne of firm faith. Decorate it with the right sattvic emotions and bathe him with the tears of joy. He will be pleased. Put around his waist a girdle of devotion. Ward off the evil eye with salt, lemon, etc. Surrender yourself to him and thereafter do the arti. The extinction or destruction of anything or the work is based on its existence. If an earthen pot is broken when a stone, then it no longer exists. It does not mean that there is not a trace of a pot's existence. If broken into pieces, the pot is put together, then it can take the original form again. Therefore, that which is known as the destruction of the effect is really dependent on the permanent existence of the cause. Therefore, the end of the body of anyone results not in void. No action is done without a reason. What is imperceptible becomes perceptible because it is enjoined to truth always. This is well known through experience. The chain of cause and effect only displays the lesser and greater degree of subtlety. In such a state of growth is destroyed. What exists or remains is verily the subtle cause. On the destruction of that also, there remains something still more subtle, where the cognizer reaches the state of cognizing all the senses, the mind as well as the intellect. In short, where the intellect comes to an end, there alone concrete turns back into the abstract. Nevertheless, the existence of cause is that abstract which cannot be clouded, as existence shines everywhere. Intellect gives support to desires. Therefore, immediately on extinction, there appears the Atman, the state of non decay at the feet. Ignorance, illusion, desire, and action are verily the main attributes of death. On elevation of these, bondage comes to an end. On the destruction of all bonds, Atman effortlessly manifests. Just on the scattering of clouds and the self luminous sun is revealed and shines. I am the body, this is my wealth, this is immense ego. These are the knots with which Maya ties our hearts and which are the causes of our sorrows. Once, if this body dies and another is acquired because of karmas, to annihilate the seeds of those karmas, then if one fails to destroy those karmas, then another birth is certain. Once again, the seeds grow into trees. The body is acquired because of the seeds of the vasanas. Thus, this is the endless cycle till all vasanas end. Eradication of the desires from the very root will remove the knots of the heart. Such a man becomes immortal. This is the teaching in the Vedas, a condition in which one has transcended righteous and unrighteous behavior as prescribed in the Shastras, which is called the Viraja, destroys all acts of ignorance, and there is no place for death. Deliverance from the Vasanas brings about the union with Brahmananda, divine bliss, which cannot be described in words spoken or written. Complete knowledge of the Parabrahma in itself, absence of all evil. That itself is the ultimate achievement as laid down in the Shrutis and Smritis. Knowledge and experience of Brahman is ultimate. This is the highest state of Brahmanand with the greater excellence can be there. All sorrows of the Atma are crossed over. To completely cross the worldly ocean, reach the yonder shores. Knowledge of the Brahma is the best and the essential means to attain everything. Have full faith and absolute patience. They are Uma Maheshwar in manifest form. The Lord who pervades the universe will not be the visible in your heart till he lays his hand of mercy on your head. Sainath, the supreme guru, whose words had unfailing potencies, and said, where what is needed is faith and a little courage, and the greatness glory is yours. All the world is seen is after all unreal. It is necessary to accept this. Take the instance of things seen in a dream, which will entirely vanish on coming to an unawakening condition or stage. So far, it is the ken of reason. Up to this only is the essential character of the individual soul. But that stage where there is no room either for existence or non existence is really the stage of truth. That is the highest soul, that which is devoid of cognition of Sat and Asat from any idea of gender and is bereft of all attributes, is verily the all encompassing nature of the preceptor expressed in the form of different words. Atman is without any attributes beyond old age, birth, or death. It is the ancient and external, indestructible, and beyond decay. It is perpetual, unborn, ancient, all pervading like the sky, unending and invisible, ungrowing and unchangeable. Then who can describe that nature which is beyond words, without a form, without being the end of unfathomable, imperishable, without smell, without taste, and untainted? Thus, this Atman, which is attributeless and invisible, is not known because of ignorance. Then remove this ignorance by knowledge, but do not ever call that Atman non existent. How wonderful was the realized state of Shri Sai, which was his personal grandeur. Time the thief had snatched it away. Would it ever be seen again? Let us not bother about the devotees who are attached to money, progeny, wife. Even the most emancipated yogis who came for darshan got deeply attached to his lotus feet. Blessed is the devotee who is in the world but detached from the bondage of all desires and deeds from the body and home. He who has sight only as an object of vision, can he see anything else? Whenever he gazes, he has no place which is devoid of sight. He who chants Sai's name and has love for Sai in his heart is always assured of his well being and repose. Sai himself protects him. Same is the case of him who hears only Sai and speaks nothing but Sai, inhales only Sai's fragrance, and savours only Sai's name in his tongue. How wonderful was Sai's smiling visage, who granted the purest of happiness. Blessed and fortunate is he that saw it and savoured the nectar of his words, the store of our well being and the source of our peace of happiness. He was full of discrimination and detachment, ever alert from within. Just as the calf, though it had its fill of milk, does not leave the mother's side. Similarly, the mind should be tied with a rope at the feet of the Guru. To attain the grace and love from the Guru, bow down in the dust of his lotus feet. Bear in mind his advice and experience it at every step. While engaged in the sense pleasures to your heart's content, bear in mind the love of for Sai, because that will help ultimately in achieving both worldly benefits and spiritual goals. The collyrium from one who has attained command over charms and spells knows that wealth is buried under the earth to the one who is born with legs foremost. Parailu. Similarly, the dust from the Guru's feet gives the gives the spiritual knowledge and scientific knowledge. Whatever are the characteristics of a Siddha should be the means for the seeker to learn with long term practice and exercise. Clarified butter, which is ghee, can be made from milk. But if the milk is not made sour, then there will be no buttermilk nor clarified butter, because all these depend upon certain actions to be performed. Without churning and the buttermilk, one cannot obtain butter. And unless the butter is boiled on the fire, tasty clarified butter will not be available. What is required is the power of previous impressions and intelligence on account of practice in the past. Without studies, there will be no purification of the mind, without which the acquisition of spiritual knowledge is really unattainable. The mind needs to be purified. Then only can self realization be achieved. So long at that stage is not achieved, do not give up on the devotion of God. One needs the foundation of devotion to God to erect the temple of self-realization, the four spires of mukti to shine, the flag of ascetic skepticism to fly. Day and night the dogs and pigs wallow in the mire and eat up. They are enjoying the sense of pleasure. Shouldn't it be the same with human beings? A human being should do penance and achieve purification of the mind, whereby the Brahman is attained completely. Such a behavior in accordance with religion is needed at the outset. Service rendered to sages become an abode for deliverance. whereas sexual indulgences open the door to hell. These are the words from revered elders which need to be borne in mind always. One whose conduct is always correct and good, who eats just enough to sustain the body and is not attached to home or wife, such a person is blessed and a sage. Those who constantly meditate upon Sai without closing their eyes, Sai himself thinks of them being obliged to them. See the wonder of this experience. Blessed is the greatness of chanting the Lord's name. Even the Guru then remembers the devotee. The meditator becomes one meditated upon, both completely forgetting themselves. You are responsible for your actions. For me, I constantly dwell upon you. Many people remember such loving words from Baba. We do not need scriptures. Just this one religious work on Sai is enough. Irrespective of the number of sins committed, he is our protector from all difficulties. If it is not possible to read consistently the entire book, just concentrate and fill your heart with the chapters on devotion to the Guru. Listen to them every day as a rule. Read the biography regularly at any time of the day. Sri Hari, together with your Guru Raj, will certainly meet his devotee. Goddess Lakshmi will permanently abide at the home where it is read regularly. At least if 1 week's reading of the whole book is done, poverty will be driven away. Do not think that I am saying this because that will create doubts. Sai himself speaks through my speech. Leave aside troublesome imagination. Sai, who is the treasure house of all virtues, is the grantor of liberation to his devotees. His stories his stories destroy all the sins of the Kali Yuga. Listeners should hear them. The bliss of heaven is mere trifle compared to the story of such a saint. Who would ever care to raise his head and look there, leaving aside the prompt benefit of this true story? Happiness and sorrow are states of mind. Association with the saint is always unchanging. It makes the mind one with consciousness and leaves no room for pain and pleasure. Even Indra or Chakravarti cannot experience the happiness till the end of time, which the detached person sitting in solitude gets, or which a devotee gets in bhakti. Fate is very powerful. The intellect one has depends upon the actions of previous birth, but the distant consequences can be easily avoided by a devotee by the sport of a saint. Though you make indefatigable efforts, you will not be able to avoid the experiences of the fruits of karma. Karma, which has stated bearing fruit, since it is associated with the stage of unavoidability, making the disassociation from the true impossible. The saints can foresee the consequences of fate, an unwanted pain or unimaginable happiness which follows. Continuous chanting of your name in our hope, penance, and charity, and a visit to Shirdi from time to time is our only pilgrimage. Sai, Sai is the name that we remember and is the mantra to propitiate all gods. This is our meditation and our repetition wholeheartedly. We surrender to Him. His real worship is a glueless, loving relationship. Then experience within yourself is inconceivable attainments. Enough of this long windedness. We need something sweet immediately. All must be eager to hear the interesting story indicated earlier. Knowing the feelings of eagerness of my listeners, I have made a compact of the marvel of the story indicated earlier so as to preserve perfect attention. I, the lowliest, slow witted, ignorant of the most elementary knowledge of poetical grammar, I am made to write what Sai wishes, made me to write while holding my hand. Who am I to write this story? If Sai had not given me the intellect, he tells his own story and he writes it for himself. Thus, now the story referred earlier of the Chavadi, Handi, and the Prasad, as promised earlier. Listen to that narration. I shall also relate to the listeners similar stories and other stories which I can recall. Listen to them attentively. Blessed is the marvel of the stories of Sai. Twice blessed are the effects of listening to them. One can experience one's real self by meditation and increases our devotion on Sai's feet. Now, a first description of the Chavadi and then to give a general outline of the ceremony. Baba slept on the alternate nights of the Chavadi as a rule. This routine of Baba sleeping one night in the masjid and the next one in the Chavadi continued regularly till the Samadhi. Later, from 10th December 1909, Baba's worship in the Chavadi, bhajans, etc. also began. Let me begin with the description of the ceremony in the Chavadi to the best of my ability. May Sai give me the grace of enthusiasm and God will help me in completing it. On the night when Baba used to go to the Chavadi, the bhajan singing group came to the masjid and the bhajans were done for some hours in the courtyard of the masjid. Behind there was a beautifully decorated chariot. To the right was a small pedestal in which the sacred basil, which is Tulsi, was planted, facing which Baba was himself seated, and in the middle were singers doing the bhajans. All devotees, men and women who had great respect for devotional songs, came to the courtyard early in all readiness for the bhajans. The sound of the bhajans swelled on the waves of various instruments played by the devotees such as tal, shipli, mridang, thanjari and ghol, while some beat time with their hands. Sai Samartha is the lodestone who, by his strength of powers of attraction, dragged the devotees like the iron filling in his feet without their knowledge. The torch bearers would light their torches in the courtyard. The palanquin was decorated there itself by some. At the gates stood the staff bearers, ready to proclaim salutations repeatedly. At the road crossing corner, there were arches, garlands, and buntings. Flags flew high in the sky. The children were dressed with new clothes and ornaments. Many rows of earthen lamps around the masjid brightened it. At the entrance of the courtyard, the horse Sham Shankar stood fully caparisoned. In the meanwhile, Tatya Patil would come with a group of people. He would sit near Baba in all readiness to live with Baba. Though Baba was ready until Tatya arrived, he would remain seated in his own place, waiting for Tatya's arrival. When Tatya Patil made Baba stand up, putting under his hand under Baba's arm, then only Baba made ready to go to the Chavdi. From there, Tatya addressed Baba as Mama, mother's brother or maternal uncle. Such was their reciprocal love and affinity. It was beyond compare. He would be wearing his usual kafni and he would place his satka under his arm. He would carry the chillam and tobacco and throw a cloth on the shoulder. When Baba was thus ready, Tatya would drape a beautiful zari embroidered cloak on his body and head, properly covering him. After this, Baba moved a little bit in front of the bundle of fuel sticks lying at the foot of the back wall, with his right toe at its own place for a moment, although immediately afterwards Sai would extinguish the lamp that was burning there with his right hand. Then he would leave for the Chavdi. When Sai set off all the musical instruments, started playing, fireworks were lit. Also, powerful luminant lamps like the offering to the god and the earthen lamp illuminated the whole area. Some played the horns, some blew the large brass trumpets, some played drums and the cymbals, and there was no dearth of people keeping time by clapping to the music. The mridang and the veena clanged amidst the loud shouting of Sai's name. In keeping with the bhajans, the men and women walked in rows, holding the banners and standards, some of which had the eagle imprinted. The congregation moved, dancing and jumping with joy and singing bhajans. All the people were very joyous. They would leave with banners and start standards in procession. The metal gongs and wind instruments made tumultuous sounds along with those who made proclamations with hands raised to the ears. There were salutations and the horses capered. Thus, with reverberations of the musical instrument, the procession left the masjid. When Baba came to the steps, the ushers made proclamations. The devotees would do bhajans with tal, mridang, veena, chipli, and cymbals blissfully at the place. The devotees walked with delight, holding the decorations and banners. On both sides stood persons holding whisks and fanning him. People folded their shawls and cloth and spread them on the way, like carpets on which Baba was made to walk, supported by devotees' hands, and others waved whisks over him. Tatya Ba held his left hand while Malsapati held his right. Babu Sahib Chok held the umbrella as a canopy over his head and in this manner proceeded to the Chavadi. In the front was a copper colored horse which was called Shamakaran. He was richly decorated and caparisoned and bells jingled on his feet. The staff bearers walked ahead proclaiming Sai's name. The canopy holders held on to the whisks and were continuously waved by the whisk holders. The musical instruments and the gongs played, and the devotees made their air resound with salutations. Thus the devotees collectively proceeded, and ushers lovingly made proclamations. The ringing sound of the Lord's name was continuous. The tal Chung Mridang was harmonious. The devotees moved collectively to beat of time, shouting and proclaiming. Thus, devotees and the bhajan singers, full of delight and shouting, host nuns crying of adoration to Sai, on the way arrived the crossroads. The instruments Tal, Jani, Dole, and Gol vehemently played. The surge of Sai's name was emphatic and Bhajan's was loving and delightful. Men and women walked with him, each filled with joy of bhajans, shouting Sai's name, the sound of which reverberated in the sky. The sky resounded with playing of the instruments. The onlooker's heart was filled with joy. The Chavdi procession thus was worth watching. The splendor of decoration was incomparable. As he stood facing the Chavdi, a luster like sun in the early morning or the late evening sky shone like the heart purified cloud from Shri's countenance. The luster of the face, that is the time, shone like the spreading light of the early dawn. It was like the core of pure consciousness. Who would not take this benefit? A darshan at that time was blessed. His face was aglow with diffuse red color. He stood facing the north with concentrated mind and seemed to be calling someone. The musical instruments and the gongs resounded. Maharaj stood full of delight, moving his right hand up and bringing down on the off. At that time, Dikshit, a leading devotee, came with a silver platter filled with many flowers and showered flowers on the on Baba's whole body on and off that time. Kaka Sahib kept on showering rose petals mixed with red facetious powder on Sai's forehead with love and devotion. Thus, when Kaka showered the rose petals mixed with red farcenius powder, the gong, jani, and tal sounded one beat, and the musical instruments played at their best. The villagers who were Baba's devotees came for darshan with great love. At that time, Baba's cast of countenance emitting a reddish glow was marvelously evident. Looking at the play of luster on his face, the eyes of the onlookers widened with surprise. Their loving minds felt abundance of joy and were freed easily from the toil of existence. Oh, that wonderful divine brilliance. Its beauty was like that of the rising sun. The gong and other instruments resounded in front of him for a long time. For more than 1.5 hours, Baba stood at one place facing north, moving his right hand up and down constantly. His complexion golden like the core ketki flower, with slight reddish luster on his face, cannot be described by the tongue. It has to be savored by the eyes only. Sometimes Malsapati began to dance, being possessed by some deity, but all were surprised to see Baba's concentration was not in the least disturbed. On the Baba's right stood Bhagat Malsapati, holding the hem of Baba's kafni very lightly, and to the left Tatya Kote walked with a lantern in his hand. How enjoyable was this celebration, which was nothing but a glorious exposition of love and devotion. The rich and the great gathered to watch the marvel of it. Self luminosity brightened the extremely fair complexion. The moonlight brilliance countenance had a little reddish glow. People filled their eyes with the indescribable beauty. Baba walked slowly. The gathering of devotees walked on both sides with tremendous love and devotion, which choked everyone and with exuberant delight. Such a celebration is no longer there for anyone to behold. Those days and those times are gone. Let us bring solace to ourselves with memories. All the musical instruments played tremulously. Host nuns were shouted on the way, taking Baba to the asan at the Chavadi. He was offered a grand worship. The Chavadi ceiling was decorated with the white awning for which chandeliers and lights were suspended, whose light was reflected in the mirrors. The whole place was brilliantly lit up. All the assembled devotees gathered closely at the Chavadi. Then Satyabha spread out the asan and helped Baba by holding him to sit on it. On that excellent asan which was prepared, a bolster was placed at the back to lean on. When Baba was settled in his seat, he was asked to wear the angartha. Beautiful apparels were placed on his body and he was worshipped with great joy. The aarti was done in top of the voices and he was presented with bouquets and garlands, anointing his hands with sandalwood paste and perfume. Ornaments were placed on him after the expensive clothes. A crown was also placed on his head as they stared at him. Sometimes it was beautiful golden crown, sometimes a lovely turban embroidered with gold and bejeweled tuft on or which shone a plume of feathers. Round his neck were diamonds and rubies. Then a white pearl necklace was put around his neck. All these ornaments and clothes were brilliantly lit up by the lights. On the forehead was drawn a vertical black line of fragrant musk, and as per tradition among the Vaishnavas, a round black tilak was also put on the forehead. That purple velvet cloth, fully embroidered with zari, was placed on the shoulders as if it slipped. It was immediately gathered together on both sides. Similarly, the crown or the turban was held aloft over his head and placed gently so that Baba was not aware of it. Whatever it was, the crown or the turban, as soon as it was touched his head, Baba threw it away. Though it was a great anxiety for them, their loving eagerness was very powerful. Did Sai, who knew the innermost thoughts of all, not know of this surreptitious action of the devotees? But considering their love and affection, he deliberately kept quiet. He who had the glorious pleasure of the realization of Brahman, of what avail is full embroidered zari cloak and ornaments, or of what avail is the embellished crown to him who is radiating inner peace. Even so, the devotees adorned Baba with variety of ornaments and applied a beautiful tilak on his forehead and mixed it with saffron. Some put diamond and pearl necklaces round his neck, and some drew tilak on his forehead. Thus, the sport of the devotees went on. How wonderful it is to look when the devotees had completed dressing bedecking Baba after the crown on his head and the pearl shone around his neck. Nana Sahib Nimorkar held the white umbrella which moved in the circle on its supporting stick with pendants and tassels. Babu Sahib washed the Guru's feet with great love. He offered the oblations of water with great devotion and offered puja with all rites. Next, he placed a silver dish with the edge and placed Baba's feet and washed them with great reverence. The hands were cleaned with perfume afterwards. Taking a small bowl of saffron, he applied the fragrant paste to his hand. He offered betel nut in Baba's palm. Sai looked pleased. When Baba was on his seat, Tatya Ba and others kept standing. Holding Baba's hand, they helped him to be seated and bowed at his feet respectfully. The Chavadi, a pure and holy place, polished like a marble, was the meeting place of the old and young who were lovingly fastened at the Shri's feet. When Baba's lustrous form grazed the seat, leaning against the bolster, the whisks and fans gently moved on both sides. Madhavrao crumbled the tobacco into the powder and immediately prepared the chillam and passed it into Tatyaba's hands, who took off the first puff. After the tobacco was ignited and a flame appeared, Tatyaba placed it in Baba's hands. After Baba's first long pull, he gave it to Bhagat. Then, in a circle, coming to Bhagat, Shama, Tatyaba from time to time till it was smoked out. Blessed it was, and how fortunate! We, the living, could not be compared in the service that it rendered, though it was inanimate. Its penance was arduous too. It was treaded upon the infancy by the potter, latter suffering of cold and heat while drying, and finally it was baked in fire. By its destiny, it was touched by Baba and baked again in the dhuni. Afterwards, it was anointed with ochre, colored powder, and fragrance. Then it was blessed by the kiss of Baba's lips. Enough. Camphor, saffron, and sandalwood paste were smeared on both hands of Baba. After putting the garlands of flowers around his neck, the devotees offered him no segyas, small bunches of flowers. He, whose face was ever smiling and who always looked with love and compassion, how could he have any pride being decked like this? He allowed all this only to show regards and feelings for his devotees. For him whose body is adorned with devotion and who is bedecked with the ornaments of peace, of what use were these worldly garlands or jewels? Of what use is the emerald necklace for him who is the embodiment of non attachment, but if awfully inclined to naked to fulfill the desires of his devotees? Glittering garlands of gold, emerald, and pearls shone around his neck. They were made of 8 and 16 rows mixed with topaz. Garlands of jasmine and basil that were put round his neck trailed upon his feet. His neck shone with unprecedented brilliance from the garland of pearls. Together with the emerald garland studded in gold, there was a gold gorget which hung over Baba's heart. The black tilak on his forehead had an enchanting story. How can he be called the fakir who looked like an effulgent descendant of Vishnu? Above him were a canopy and whisks, and his head was adorned by the zari embroidered cloak. Generally, Jog was great with love, taking a 5 week lamp in his hand, would wave it over Baba in the midst of din and clamor of the auspicious music of instruments. After offering the five oblations together with puja and then taking abundantly filled 5 burning lamps with niranjan and camphor, he waved it around Baba. Then, after the arti ended, one by one, all the devotees prostrated with eightfold obeisances, surrendering to Baba and left for their homes. When Tatyaba took Baba's permission to leave for home after offering chillam and rose water, then Baba used to say, "Take care of me. Go if you're going. but during the night from time to time inquire about me, saying, "Very well," Tatyaji would leave the chawdi and go home. Then, when all the people had left, Baba would untie the bundle and spread the folds of dhoti, making his bed in with his own hands. Then he himself spread 60 to 65 white sheets, one on top of the other, and Baba then slept on them. Here ends the story of the Chavadi as it used to happen. Now the story still remains, will be told in the next chapter. I beg forgiveness from the listeners as Sai's greatness is unfathomable. Though I wish to tell it briefly, I could not limit it, for all was very significant. Now the story of Sai's cooking vessels and whatever other stories that have been left out will be narrated in the next chapter. Please be reverently attentive to always remember the Guru. That is the selfish motive of Hemat, to enable him to achieve whatever is desired in this world and also to the other. He can achieve all goals of life by prostrating at the feet of the Guru, as they are all contained therein. May there be well being. This is the end of the 37th chapter of the Shri Sai Satcharithra, written by the devotee Hemat Pant, impelled by the saints and virtuous people, called Description of the Chavadi. This is offered to Shri Sadguru Sainath. May there be auspiciousness. Om Sai Ram. Let us now do the Aarti. श्री सच्चिदानंद सतगुरु साईनाथ महाराज की जय। शिर्डी माझे पंढरपूर, साई बाबा रमावर, बाबा रमावर, साई बाबा रमावर, शुद्ध भक्ती चंद्रभागा, भाव कुंडली गंधागा, कुंडली गंधागा, भाव कुंडली गंधागा, याव याव अवके जन, करा बाबा श्रीवंदन, साई श्रीवंदन, करा बाबा श्रीवंदन, तनु बने बाबा साई, भाव भाव माझे आई, भाव माझे आई, भाव भाव माझे आई, अनिल तांगन बने कचरला, तुझी पायन रूप तुझे, प्रेमीन रंगीन अनंत पूजी, पविव मायन बने नमा, तमेव माता पिता त्वमेव, त्वमेव बंधु सदा त्वमेव, त्वमेव विद्या दैरंगमेव, त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव देव, अयनुमाचा प्रसन्नियर्म, मुद्यतनावा स्वभाव, रोमी अत्यंत सकलिंतरस्मै, नारायणाय समर्पयामि, अच्युतं केशवं राम नाम नारायणं, कृष्णदामोदरं वासुदेवं हरे, ईरवं माधवं गोपिका वल्लभं, जानकी नायकं रामचन्द्रं हरे, हरे राम, राम राम, हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, श्री गुरुदेव दत्त, सच्चिदानंद सद्गुरु साईनाथ महाराज की जय। Om Sai Ram. I urge all the listeners to read one chapter of the Sai Satcharithra daily and so in Baba Bliss. Baba bless you. Om Sai Ram.